Hello, Savvy Scribes, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have Daphne Gray, and she is someone who I think you should really get to know. She teaches business owners, academics, corporate communicators, book writers, and others how to banish writer's block so they can write with happiness and ease. And so much more, you guys. There's a lot in this episode, and I really, really, really want you to go over to Daphne's website, publicationcoach.com, and sign up for her email list because her newsletter is one that I don't pass up every week. So I think you'll really enjoy it, and let's get going. Welcome to the Savvy Scribe Podcast, a podcast for healthcare professionals who want to build a profitable writing business. I'm Janine Kalbach, your host, and I am a mom to 2 boys. I'm a wife, a Great Dane lover, a registered nurse, and a content writing business owner. I am committed to help you moving your business forward because I've been there. I get it. I understand that life is busy and distracting, but many of us are burnt out at the bedside, working too many hours, and are ready for a change. Every week, I will deliver actionable advice and thought leaders in the industry to help you move along in your business. Welcome to the show. Welcome, Daphne.
Hi, thanks for welcoming me.
Absolutely. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. Despite the pandemic, I'm managing to survive in isolation.
Yes.
From Zoom.
Thank God for Zoom. And you know what's funny is the people that have never used Zoom and are in that like archaic side of things, and they think you're like the most like into technology person because you have the Zoom meeting with them. Listen, I've been using Zoom since Zoom came out. so welcome. Tell our audience a little bit today about, who you are, what you do.
Okay, well, I am a writer and editor and writing coach. So I work with people from a wide variety of backgrounds all around the world to help them write faster, better, more easily. And I do that in a number of ways. I have a couple of books I've written, which people can buy through my website. I have an online course. I do one-on-one coaching. And I have a really interesting group of writers called the Get It Done program. And they report into me every day, 5 days a week for 3 months about how many words they wrote each day.
Oh, I love that. That's like total accountability.
Total accountability, yes, indeed.
So do you just help writers who write books, or do you help all types of writers?
All different types of writers. So people who write books are a big subset, but so are academics. So I have a lot of professors or people working on PhD dissertations or master's theses. I also have people who are needing to write blog posts for their business. So anybody who wants to write, wants to make it easier, more pleasant, and faster, I can help them.
So tell me a little bit, how did your career path start?
Well, that's an ironic story. So I kind of grew up in the newspaper business. My parents owned a struggling weekly newspaper. So I was not an heiress or anything like that. It was a struggling weekly newspaper, and I worked there for many years, starting quite young. When I was in the equivalent of grade 11, I started working there. And I worked all the way through university, and I kind of ended up running the business for about 5 years. And then I escaped as soon as I could because family businesses are not a great place to be. And I went and worked for a large metropolitan daily. And I was able to go in there as a senior editor. And I did that for about 6 years. Absolutely loved it. It was really fun, really interesting. And then I got recruited to go work on the business side of the business. And so I became the director of communications for the parent company, and I did that for about 5 years, I think. And then I had my children, and I don't do things in a small way. I had triplets.
Holy cow, I didn't know that.
Yes. So after having the triplets, I went back to work 1 day a week for about a year. And the company had a buyout offer on the table at that point, and I thought, I should just take the money and run. So I did that, but being at home all day with 3 infants is not much fun. So they're adorable.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's really hard work. And they're adorable. They've grown up now. They're 26 years old, and I'm very close to all of them. But when they were infants, I really needed to get out of the house a little bit.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so
Sanity.
I started working. But the thing I'd kind of forgotten when I started working was that I never really liked writing. I always loved editing. I was a born editor. When I was in high school, I would edit papers for friends because I thought that was a fun thing to do. And I did the same thing at university. And then when I got into the daily newspaper, I went in as an editor, and I was really, really good at it. I had just a natural aptitude for editing, but sadly, no natural aptitude for writing. And anytime I had to write, I found it horribly stressful and painful and slow. And when I left the newspaper business, of course, those things didn't change. And I had suddenly become a freelancer who did mainly editing, but I also had to do a bit of writing, and I hated every nanosecond of it. So I took myself aside and I said, you've really got to do something about this problem. So I took about a year. I read every book I could find on writing. I talked to a lot of people. I did a lot of experimenting. And in the end, I was able to double my own writing speed. Plus, this is the more important point, turn writing into something I really enjoyed doing. So now I'm at a stage, and I have been for 15 years, I enjoy writing as much as I enjoy editing. And I never, ever thought that sentence would pass my lips.
That is great. And here's what I get out of it. First, I'm going back to your triplets because I'm an identical twin, and I just think it's so great that you have triplets. And the second thing is, I'm a labor and delivery nurse. So how many weeks did you make it with your triplets?
33 weeks.
Good for you.
Yeah. So that's considered term for triplets, as you probably know.
Yes.
But
How'd they do?
Well, they did well. I went into a hospital with preterm labor at 29.
I'm sure you did. You were probably huge.
I was huge. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget, I was put on bed rest at 20 weeks. And so I don't know when I did this particular shopping trip, but I remember being at the grocery store. So it was before I was 20 weeks. And the clerk looked at me and she said, "You're going to pop any day now."
You're like, I'm 20 weeks.
I know.
So my mom didn't know she was having twins. So back in the 80s, they didn't do like ultrasounds unless you really had something going on. And so, we were supposed to be one big boy. Here we come, two girls. So just the story of twins and triplets always amazes me. And the mothers behind them really amaze me. My twin sister, identical twin, even though, it doesn't run in the family, she has a set of twins. And so we're identical. So I totally got to see like myself carrying like twins. Now, mind you, we're only like 4'10", like 100 pounds. So it was like absurd. It was like so not natural looking. But like she did well, and they're 9 years old now. But tangent story. Just love my love for labor and delivery. So anyway, and then onto your writing side, I think it's funny because I'm the opposite. I love writing because I love getting the thoughts out, and I always, before I start writing, I have to have like a strategic manner of doing it, but that I love doing it. But I hate editing. You need to write a book on it.
So let me tell you something about that, because I have been an editor for more than 25 years now. And so I have worked with thousands of people, and I can tell you that the people who prefer writing to editing are about 20% of the population. So
really?
80% vastly prefer editing to writing, and 20% prefer writing to editing. And for both groups of people, it's really hard to get them to do the other thing.
Well, and what's funny is that, I always knew I was a little bit weird. I'm a twin. I'm left-handed. I start businesses. A little bit weird. Now I know I'm a weird writer too. But because I always read that stuff like, editing's the easy part. But I'm like, no, it's not. I hate it. Like, I like getting it out, launching it, and then eventually going back and tweaking. But truly, like, that's the struggle for me. So for the majority of the population, tell me about your book, your Happy First Draft. I want to hear first, how'd you come up with that title? Because I think it's great.
Well, I had such a hard time coming up with the title because I had originally in my mind's eye, I titled it Your Crappy First Draft.
Yes.
Because that's what I promote. I encourage people to write and to be satisfied with writing a really crappy first draft, because what that does is it takes the pressure off yourself.
Yes.
And taking the pressure off yourself helps you write better and faster and more enjoyably. So in my mind's eye, for the year or more it took me to write the book, it was Your Crappy First Draft. And then it suddenly occurred to me with horrifying clarity that title was way too negative for the book.
Truly.
Who's going to want to buy a book with the word crappy in it? So I had a lot of anguish after that, and I came up with dozens of titles, and I spoke with a great many friends. And then finally, kind of maybe 6 weeks before I was going to press, I was speaking with another friend, and I still wasn't 100% happy with any of the choices I had. And she started playing around with it, and she said, oh, you could just kind of put an X through the CR and replace it with an H for happy, and that would work. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
Is she an editor too? What an editor thing to do.
No, she's a writer. She's a writer. She's very creative, and she loves puns. So
I love it. Just cross it out, make it look good. And it's a yellow title or yellow cover, so it's like bright and happy, and it's total. It's great. Yeah. I love it. So what does the book tell you? What's it walk you through?
Well, I mean, this book obviously would be intended for the majority of people who find writing really hard and daunting, not for people like you.
But I'll tell you, I got some stuff out of it. So
good.
Yes.
Glad to hear that. Well, I guess the thing is, when I discovered through my own process of how to make writing more enjoyable and a whole lot faster, I started as a professional writer and editor, and by the time I used this process on myself, I more than doubled my own writing speed. So
that's great.
That made me insanely happy. And I have since worked with clients who have tripled their writing speed. So the system really, really works. I think, there's sort of 5 basic principles that I think really make a difference to most of the people who find writing slow and painful. And the number one tip, and I think you might find this a little bit strange, but many of the people I work with try to write too soon. So they're essentially forcing themselves to write before they're really ready to write. And probably the biggest group that falls into this category is academics. And I think with them, they probably have a deadline or a supervisor breathing down their neck. And they think that if they're not actually accumulating words on the page, they're not doing work. And that is not true. The act of thinking and planning is such an important part of writing. This was really illustrated to me many years ago when my kids were young. I remember one day walking past one of my daughter's bedrooms, and she was sitting at her desk and she was crying. So I went in and I said, what is wrong? And she said, oh, I have to write this essay and I just can't do it. And I thought, oh, your mom's a writing coach. I can help you. This is perfect. So I sat down, put my arm around her shoulder and said, okay, so where is your research? And there was a long silent
What are you talking about?
And she said, well, I haven't started yet. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I explained to her, I think she was in grade 9 at the time. I explained to her, you can't write until you've done the research.
Yes.
But many people try to do something like that. I assume most people at the university level, they're smart enough not to have done no research. But you know what they might do? They might do a lot of research and not have figured out what their argument is or what their point is, what they want to say in the paper. And if you haven't figured out what it is you want to say, then you're not ready to write.
You're right.
So,
well, it's funny. I have a brother-in-law. He was doing his master's degree, and he'd be the biggest procrastinator. And it boggled my mind because I'm not that way. Which again, weirdo. Everybody else procrastinates, but I don't. But he said to me, he goes, "Oh my gosh, Janine, I haven't even started my paper, and it's due tomorrow." And I'm like, "What do you mean you haven't even started it?" Well, to him, starting was actually doing the writing part. He did all the research. He had a draft. I'm like, "Oh, you're fine." Like, you're making me think that you haven't started. And truly, a lot of writers come to me and they're like, "What do I charge per hour or per?" They phrase it that way for clients, and I'm like, "You can't do it that way because clients don't understand the actual process of writing. We're not just going out there and just writing and being done with 400 words and calling it a day. No, that's the easy part almost. The hardest part is doing the happy first draft."
Yes, for sure. So I think, and you know, Janine, you said you don't procrastinate, but I bet you procrastinate about editing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
So that's the thing. I mean, one thing I want to say, and this is really important for anyone who describes himself as a procrastinator, because there's this kind of public perception that procrastination represents some brand of laziness. And it does not.
Mm-mm.
You know, if you sat and beat your head against a brick wall, what would happen? You'd get a headache and your head would start to bleed. So guess what? You'd stop doing it. Well, for the same reason people don't write or they don't edit, because the process is painful and uncomfortable to them.
Yes.
They're not doing it because they're lazy. They're not doing it because they don't have the tools to do it well.
And one of my biggest tips for people, like, okay, if, you know, editing isn't the thing I hate. So if there's something that I have to do, I make it that I have to do it before I do anything else in the morning. So I will get up and edit the first day because that's what I hate. You know what I hated the most is editing my book. Like, I had an editor, but even like before I sent it to the editor, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it. It was like awful, but I would force myself to do the bare minimum, like one page.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'd eventually do another page and another page on top of it. I'm like, all right, it's not that bad. You know, whatever you got to do to make it through it. But yeah, I love that you have a process because I feel like businesses are work ethic. Everything is driven that way. We're, as humans, we like that routine and we like that systematic thinking that, yeah, I love it. That's why I'm like, I got to have her on my show because I just love everything you're doing. Speaking of that, I love your email newsletter. So tell my listeners what your website is.
This episode is brought to you by my very own course, Plan, Create, Launch, Land, and Grow Your Health Writing Business. Inside this course, you will find the complete roadmap from knowing nothing about freelance writing to launching your very own profitable health writing business. With 45 plus lessons and an opportunity to earn CEUs, why wouldn't you try it out to escape that bedside burnout? If you want to start a new PRN job instead of picking up more and more hours extra at the bedside job, join me and plenty of other nurses by going to www.thesavvyscribepodcast.com and click on courses. Back to the show.
Yeah, so the website name is The Publication Coach. And I do a free weekly newsletter called Power Writing. It goes out every Tuesday. And so anyone who wants to subscribe to it, it won't cost you a cent. Just go to my website, www.publicationcoach.com. And on the homepage there'll be a little box. It'll shake a little bit so you see it. Fill in your name and your email address. I don't ever share that with anyone ever under any circumstances. And you'll get the newsletter once a week for free. And if you find it's not to your taste or you don't like it, then you can unsubscribe easily with one click. So it's very low.
But you guys, let me tell you, you're going to love this newsletter. I was telling Daphne before we even got on a call, I know you guys are like me and you probably subscribe to a lot of things because you're learning a lot and you want to know a lot. And her newsletter is amazing. Like, you will get a ton out of it. I actually look forward to it. I didn't realize it was on Tuesdays. It must just be because I'm just going through my emails, but I'll delete, and I see yours. And I'm like, oh, no, I gotta read that one. Keep going through it. But yeah, you guys go to her website and sign up. Press pause on this and go to the website now. Go sign up before you forget because it is something so valuable. What was I going to say? Something? Oh, when do you write that newsletter?
Oh, well, that's interesting. I write it every Thursday morning at 9 a.m.
No, that's funny. Why that? That's just what you tell yourself?
No, it's quite interesting because when I started doing it, I didn't really have the writing habit 100% nailed down. And I was at a conference in San Francisco, and I happened to meet someone, and we ended up becoming email pals. And then she contacted me a few weeks later, and she said, "Do you want to meet once a week?" And we would each work on something. We'd talk for a couple of minutes, then we'd hang up the phone and we'd each go and work on something for an hour, and then we'd phone each other and chat again. So I said, sure, I'm up for that. So what I decided to do was write my newsletter during that time. And so we meet every Thursday morning. We chat for about 5 minutes, catch up. She lives in Denver. And then we hang up, I go write, and then we chat again at the end of the hour. And my column is done. It's fantastic.
I love it. That's such an accountability partner you got there. I love it. Oh, what does she do while you do that?
She has a newsletter as well, but hers isn't weekly, so she does a bunch of different things.
I love it.
Things she's been procrastinating on. So
there you go. There you go. See, that's awesome. That's so great. So, what is one of the best pieces of advice you can give to somebody starting a freelance writing business? Or any business from home.
Well, I would
besides not to have triplets.
yeah. Don't have triplets. That's
don't have triplets.
Advice. The thing I would say is teach yourself to learn how to mind map. Mind mapping is such an incredibly valuable tool. And by the way, anyone who signs up for my newsletter will get a little free handout on mind mapping. So if you sign up, you'll get an email from me with a link to a little booklet I've written on mind mapping. I don't know how many of people listening to this broadcast will be familiar with it. It was taught fairly widely in schools, I think in the 1990s, maybe.
Yeah, I learned it. I remember, yeah.
Good. Do you use it?
I do, not because of school, but because I picked it up later again in life when I was trying to plan out my goals for my business for the year. That's how I started it. And man, I didn't think I would enjoy it. I don't know, because it's just different, right? So I started it, and then I just kept going and going and going. And yes, it was very helpful that I started using it for writing too.
It's extraordinarily helpful for writing. So anyone who wants to pursue it, there's just one little tweak. I mean, there are lots of books written about mind mapping. Tony Buzan is the kind of worldwide expert on it. I think he's written something like 47 books on mind mapping. For such a simple principle, it boggles my mind how he got 47 books out of it.
Man.
But anyways, he suggests you just write your topic in the center of the page. Now, I have a little tweak to that because I work 100% with writers. And what I find works better is to write a question in the center of the page. The thing about a question that's more effective is that it's provocative. So you see a question and you're going to want to come up with an answer. You see a topic, you might not have something to say, but if you have a question, you're going to want to answer it. So that's my big recommendation about mind mapping. And then a couple of other things I would say, go to my website if you're interested in it. And there's a little sidebar along any of my blog pages. And in that sidebar, there's a link that says something like, I'm just going to go there right now. It says all about mind mapping. If you click on that, you'll be taken to all the blog posts and all the videos I've done about mind mapping, and there are quite a few. So if you want to get more familiar about mind mapping, that would be a really good place to go.
Very cool.
And then the next thing I would say is a typical mistake I find many beginners make is that they tend to write too much information on their mind maps. So it's not about scrawling an essay into a little tiny space. It's about just having a couple of words to represent the ideas you want to remember. So I describe those little things you write on the mind map as kind of like coat hook labels. I don't know if you can think about a kindergarten classroom at the back where they've got all the coat hooks along the wall, and usually there's a little tag with the name on them. Yeah, that's what the mind map items are like. They're like labels. So you just need one or two words to remind you what it is that you want to remember. You don't need to spell out the whole story or the whole peer-reviewed journal article. You just need the name, you know?
Yes.
That'll give you enough to remember. So those are a couple of mind mapping tips, but go to my website if you want some more. It's a really, really useful technique to kind of schedule your inspiration. That's what I think about it.
Well, and like you said, you can use it in like anything you do or anything you got to plan out. It's very helpful. I love tools like that. I love anything that can like make my life easier, and that can make life easier.
Oh, for sure. You know, one other thing I say, and I kind of call this advanced mind mapping, but it's not advanced at all. It's very simple and straightforward. I like to use mind mapping to ask myself questions about my own process. So if I'm having difficulty with a particular piece of writing, I might do a mind map where the question in the center of the page is, why am I having a hard time writing this piece? Right?
Should I do why do I hate editing?
yeah, you should do that. Yeah.
It'll just keep going and going.
Yeah, good idea.
So, just to talk to the nurse writers that I have a little bit, what are some actionable tips that you have for them to start the process of writing faster?
Well, you know, I think the fundamental one to me, because I find so many people do this, is people have generally developed the habit of editing while they write.
Yes, not me.
That is so toxic. That is so toxic. What it does is it's bad for a couple of reasons. The first is that it's going to make you uncomfortable and slow because it puts you in the role of having to evaluate the quality of your writing while you're doing the writing.
Yes.
And that's a terrible place to be. Because remember, all you need is a crappy first draft.
Or a happy one.
Or a happy one. That's all you need. That's all you need. So you shouldn't, when you are writing, questions of quality should be irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
The only question is, how many words can you produce? How fast can you do
just keep going.
Just keep going. Do not worry about quality. The other thing is to keep reminding yourself that your first draft will not be seen by anyone else until you give it to them.
It's true. It's true.
So if you don't give it to them, they're not going to see it. So you don't have to worry. You really don't have to worry about quality. There's no big brother hanging over your shoulder to read those terrible words you're writing. So write the terrible
Just write them, yeah.
Doesn't matter. Just get them down on the page. Because the number one thing is you cannot edit a blank page.
That's true. Got to have something on it.
Yeah, you do. So I guess the other reason that is just as important, and I'm going to give this reason as well, because different reasons motivate different people. And so if my argument that, you don't want to be evaluating yourself while you're writing because that's going to make you feel terrible about the writing process, maybe there's some really tough people in there who say, I can feel terrible. I can still muscle my way through it. I have another point for you, and that is that if you are editing while writing, you are choosing the world's worst time to edit. Because guess what? You have done all the research. You have done all the thinking. You, for God's sakes, have done the writing. So while you are doing that, you are maximally different from your readers. Your readers haven't done the thinking you've done. Your readers haven't done the research you've done. They certainly haven't done the writing you've done. So how are you going to be aware of what questions are in their minds and what gaps there are in your writing? You're not if you do the editing while you're writing. You're in the world's worst position to edit. So that's why I suggest to people that they edit after writing and, also after taking what I call an incubation period. So for someone who's doing a long form project, like a book or a dissertation, I suggest waiting 6 weeks before editing a word. Now that will often make people gasp in horror when I say that. And you can't do that with blog posts. But for blog posts, I try to allow a day for my own blog posts. And for a report or for something you're handing into someone that you're going to be paid for, try to allow 2 days to a week because you are going to be a much, much, much better editor at that point.
You clear your head a little bit and it's like
Yes.
new eyes, and sometimes you look at it and you're like, what the heck was I even writing? What are you talking about here?
Right. But you know what? The opposite also happens. You look at it and you go, oh, that's way better than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's true. True.
You know? And think back to how you might have, if you just written it and you thought it was no good, you might have changed it.
Right. You're right.
That would have been tragic.
Exactly. No, that's good. That's good advice. And I do try to do that. The other thing I do is, not always, but sometimes I write my like outline or little bit of a draft like on paper. Like sometimes I can't just type because I am stuck at like, oh, let me go research this again. Oh, no, like if I am stuck with just a piece of paper, I just write. And then the other thing I do sometimes is I'll print it and I'll edit it just like writing on the paper. It's just more of a tactile thing sometimes.
Right.
Again, I like get away from the computer, get away from the internet and just be able.
Yes.
Can't go anywhere and do it now. Can't like go to the coffee shop, but.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, getting away from the computer is a really, really good thing to do, particularly before you start writing. Part of the reason I think is that there are actually two reasons. One relates to how we breathe when we're sitting at desks. So as you probably know, many of us, when we're sitting at desks, tend to breathe very shallowly. We don't get enough deep breaths. And there are a few people like me who have what I call writing apnea. So
you just stop breathing.
Writing, and I'm really caught up in something, I'll just forget to breathe. And this is actually a real problem for a shocking number of people because the brain is 2% of human weight, but it uses 20% of the oxygen we take in. So there's a big disconnect between the size of the brain and how much oxygen it demands. And so if we're not getting enough oxygen, it's harder for us to think. And so one of the benefits of forcing yourself to go out for a walk is that you're going to be breathing more deeply and you're going to be oxygenating your brain.
Yeah, the fatigue just somehow goes away. It's because you're oxygen deprived.
Yes, exactly.
Makes sense, nurses.
And then the other thing that I think makes sense is that when you can't write, so when you can't write when you're walking, it's really hard to do.
You can try it. It's like a kindergartner wrote it.
Yeah.
We've all tried.
But when you can't write, your brain is going to come up with better ideas. And I think that's because we're all a little bit counterintuitive. And it's like our brains only get really creative and go off in kind of interesting, useful, provocative directions when we're not doing something like sitting at a desk.
Yes. That's why your best ideas come in the shower.
Exactly.
You can't do anything else.
Yeah. So go for a walk before you write. That is going to help improve your writing a lot. Now, I'll tell you something that might surprise a lot of you, but I have a treadmill desk. So I'm actually sitting on the treadmill desk as we talk. I had my husband build me a little plywood platform so I can drop it down and drag my office chair on top of it when I want to sit. But when I'm actually walking when I write. So that's really helpful to me. That helps a lot.
After this podcast, I'm going to have to talk to you about that because I want one of those because I think it is. They actually have them at work. Obviously, we have the cows, the computers on wheels, and we chart and we talk to our patients and blah, blah, which is great. But they also, in our hospital library, they have a standing desk. And it's so nice that I have made my like desk sometimes into a standing desk at home. Yeah. But to be able to walk would be even better.
Oh, it is. It's
so now, can you like type though? Or are you like?
Yes, absolutely. It's not a problem at all.
Oh, how nice. Do you feel more energized though? Like when you're
I absolutely feel more energized. My brain works better.
Yes.
And I have chronic back pain, so it also relieves the chronic back pain.
Yeah, because sitting is not good for your back all the time. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's not.
It's probably from carrying those triplets.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
26 years ago. So, I always want to talk to my guests a little bit about, 3 things besides the triplet things that our audience might not know about you or be surprised to learn?
Oh, dear. Well, we've been through the two best ones. One is the treadmill desk, and the other is the
yes.
What else would I say? Well, we've probably been through the third one, and that is that although I'm a writing and editing coach, and I've been a writer and editor for all of my working life, I hated writing until I was in my mid 40s. I hated it. It was the thing I most disliked doing. Always.
Because you didn't have your process, and now you have your process.
Yeah.
That's what's so great.
Well, and also because I was putting way too much pressure on myself. I was expecting that the first draft had to be essentially the draft I was going to hand in, which is not true.
It's so true. Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. So again, tell our listeners your website again, just so they can find you. And what other, what's your course that you have for writers as well?
Yeah, so my website is www.publicationcoach.com. I do have a course called Extreme Writing Makeover. So it's delivered by email, and it's essentially a self-directed course. So some people do find that quite useful, but the program I try to encourage more people to think about is called Get It Done. And that's where I work with writers who either really want to develop the writing habit or who have a big writing project that they desperately need to do. So that might be someone who's writing a book that they're committed to doing, or they have a PhD dissertation or a master's thesis they need to write. And I have about 35 people in the group right now, and it's quite fantastic. So anyone who's a member of the group has to report into me every day, 5 days a week, telling me how many words they wrote, what time they wrote them. What other questions do I ask? If they spent any time editing or researching. So I have a little questionnaire that they have to fill out every day, 5 days a week. And if they don't fill it out, they hear from me by email or by phone.
Oh man, it's like the principal.
Yeah, but it is a little bit like the principal, only I'm much nicer than
yes.
the principal.
Yes. And I bet they get value out of it. Like I'm sure they produce whatever they have to much faster.
Oh,
with somebody on their back a little bit to just push them along. Because it's hard. When you're by yourself, you're like, no one's making me.
Yes, that's quite true. And the other thing I would say is it's not so much I'm on their back, it's that there's also a space on the forum that if they have a question, they can ask me that question and I will answer always within 24 hours. And so I can suggest a little tweak to their process that will make all the difference. So, not infrequently, because I ask people to tell me what time they do their writing, I will notice that some people, they might get, say, 500 words if they're writing at 8 a.m. And if they're writing at 4 p.m., they'll only get 236. Well, the problem is the time of day.
Yeah, so, your brain's done.
Yeah. Now, if they're a night owl, it won't be that way. It may be
sure.
Worse. But, so I'm able to look at that form and give them some concrete suggestions about things they can do differently to help make the writing process easier.
I love it. Now, did any of your kids go into writing?
No.
It's always funny to hear.
No, not at all. Not at all. No,
not even close. Anyone creative?
Yes, my son is a musician.
Okay.
He's not. He actually became an opera singer, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yes. So he trained in an opera program and he decided not to practice professionally, but he works for the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. He runs their School of Music.
Wow.
Yeah, he's very happy doing that and he's very creative. He plays any instrument you can imagine. He just seems to pick it up.
I love that.
We gave him a banjo as his graduation gift. And he taught himself how to play. Just boggles my mind.
I know. Isn't that such a... Yeah. My husband's a drummer. And my son, Zach, he can play the drums and the guitar. And then my little guy, James, he's learning the drums. And here I'm like, I'm good at cheering you on. About it.
Yeah.
No, I wish I had that talent. But they really amaze me when people can do that.
Yeah. So that's my son. And then my other two daughters, one is, she did her degree in kinesiology. And she's trying to get into school to become a physiotherapist. So that's what she wants to do.
That's cool.
And then my other daughter, she's her middle name is Empathy. And so she's, of course, she's not able to work right now because of the pandemic, but she's worked with an organization where she works with adults with developmental disabilities. And
very good.
Yeah.
Well, very good. That's so awesome. That's funny that you're just the writer, you're the editor, you're the coach. Nobody would do it. It's the same thing. I always ask nurses, like, did your kids go into nursing? Oh, no. Nobody wants to do it. Well, thank you so much, Daphne, for coming on the show today. I'm going to link everything, you guys, in the show notes, but take a look at her website and go get some accountability from her if you need it. Thanks again, Daphne. It's been a pleasure.
Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too. Hey guys, guess what? I got another freebie for you. So I just launched a course over in the Savvy Scribe Growth Lab called The Nursing Process Behind Booking Writing Clients, the done-for-you care plan for prospects. Okay, I know, the nursing process, right? Are you asleep? Time to wake up. The assessment, diagnosis, outcomes, implementation, and evaluation. Is it all coming back right now? I promise I make it fun and actionable because I hated care plans in nursing school. But I thought I would put this together for us because I feel like it translates into using it for prospects because we can actually implement those steps and land writing clients. So come on over to thesavvyscribepodcast.com and click on courses, and you can get your free course right now.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Savvy Scribe. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Until next time.